My name is Donna Lucas, and I'm happy to welcome you here to She Shares. And I'm very excited that She Shares, this is our 5th season. It's hard to believe that we've been doing this for 5 years. And so we're very excited to be here to do that. And I want to take a moment, just a moment, to recognize our sponsors, because if it wasn't for them, we would not be here. One of them right now is looking for his table. John Garcia, sit down. Yay, John Garcia! Our founding sponsors are Lucas Public Affairs, of course, Thomas Law Group, and Skelton Strategies, as well as Kaiser, Oric, Manat, Accenture, Marcy Freeman, AT&T, Pfizer, the California Endowment, Stoll Reeves LLP, State Farm, Neiman Papelis and Associates, Political Solutions, Kelly Boyd for BBC Public Affairs, and Cassie Gelsons for Sacramento Advocates. How about a big round of applause? Thank you. And a special thank you to our media partners, KCRA, the California Channel, and Comstock Magazine. I also want to mention, while these are always great networking events and fun to be at, we also have a wonderful mentorship program. As many of you know, that's a big component of She Shares, and that we have a partner in that, the California Center for Civic Participation, Jim Moldavy, and many of the board are here. Thank you. And we have over 20 pairs that have been meeting and getting to know each other since January. We recently hosted a workshop for our mentees with a great speaker on millennials and how they relate to other generations. Yes, as I've said before, I know I would find that very intriguing. And thank you all for participating today. We really, really appreciate it. So let's get on with the program. We're very, 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 very excited to have our special guest today, who you'll hear more from. But before that, a very special person has come in to introduce her, and we are very honored to have Mayor Willie Brown, who is here. Mr. Brown. For those of you who don't know who Willie Brown is, I don't think there's anyone who doesn't know that. He was in the California legislature for 30 years, 15 of which he ruled as the speaker. He was the mayor of San Francisco for 8 years, and today he is a distinguished columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle. Can I say that, distinguished and chronicle in the same verse? But the most powerful and important title he has is FOA, Friend of Alice. So he knows more about Alice than anyone, but we are really, truly honored to have him here today to do a special introduction for Alice Huffman. Mr. Brown.
I must tell you that when Donna Lucas telephoned to me and said that Alice was going to be your guest, and I wondered why the call. Alice does not like to share this podium. And this is called She Shares. Well, that is not descriptive of Alice in public service. I've known Alice, as Donna says, for years and years and years and years. I knew Alice before she was in government. I knew Alice when she was in government. I knew Alice when she left government. And each of those stations that Alice has occupied, there has always been a dramatic change and an elevation of the position that she abandoned. When she left the world of politics on the formal side with CTA, just as I was being elected mayor of San Francisco back in the 90s, I wondered aloud, what shall be Alice's fate? And lo and behold, the NAACP and the Democratic Party were the beneficiaries of this extraordinary talent. I understand that you're going to see some candid photo shots of Alice over the years. And you got to look closely, because in some you won't recognize her. there has been a change for the better in Alice's life. Those were not, setups. It really has. She's really evolved. And there's a side of Alice that she doesn't share very much with many people, and I'm sure Karen will cover those kinds of things from the profile standpoint, from her background, where she was born and raised, and how many relatives she had that were sisters and brothers, etc., how many are still with us. All of that is what you would want to know. But there's also another thing you should want to know. Alice was interviewed when Ike Turner was looking for a wife. He interviewed Alice. Alice was a better singer than Tina, but Alice figured him out instantly and didn't go back for the second interview. And therefore, the loser got the title of Mrs. Ike Turner, or Tina, and it took her a while to figure out what Alice knew from the beginning. Well, Alice's demonstration of good judgment on that part never at any moment silenced her in terms of the beautiful voice that she really has. She, however, chose to be a public servant in the true sense of the word, and in every sense of the word. And as I said, the NAACP for the whole Western region has been unusually blessed, and the Democratic Party has been blessed. Believe me, 4 years ago, when Barack Obama was seeking re-election, the woman heading that convention and organizing it in North Carolina was Alice. You can find Alice surfacing almost every place. And if Hillary was really on her job, she would, at the next debate, be about declining to meet Trump and let Alice have at it. Trump would withdraw halfway through the debate, and we would not be plagued with this prospects for the presidency, because Alice will have vanquished him as she has vanquished so many other really bad people. Young ladies and young ladies and young men, if there are any young men here, this organization and the concept that has been put together by all of these women who have done this, they could do no better than Alice as an ideal role model, because this extraordinary, talented, and gifted person definitely shares all aspects of her life in the world of public service, trying to make things better for everybody. And with that, you're going to have a good time listening to Alice. Congratulations, Alice.
He only told a few fibs.
Thank you, Mayor Brown. Thank you, Donna, and welcome to She Shares, Alice Huffman. I feel like after that, I don't know how do we begin, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about today's guest. It's an amazing story. Alice Huffman has been president of the California NAACP since 1999. The first woman to hold that office. She's won 8 consecutive elections. She's also a member of the National Board of the NAACP, a past appointee of 3 Democratic and Republican governors. She's a founding member and president of the Board of Directors of the Center for Democratic Participation. She's a member of the Democratic National Committee, as Mayor Brown just told us, and a superdelegate in every sense of the word to the national conventions. She serves on more commissions and committees than I can name here, and if that wasn't enough, Alice Huffman runs her own consulting firm, AC Public Affairs. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but at about now, I'm starting to feel like a little bit of a slacker when I think about what I do, and I suspect I'm not the only one. And I want to start on a serious note today. There's a lot going on in this country that we should talk about. And I want to start really with a variation of the question that Lester Holt asked in Monday night's debate. And that is, that the share of Americans who say that race relations are bad in this country is the highest it's been in a very long time. And I'm wondering, from where you sit, is it because relations are objectively worse, or is it because through the power of social media, so many of us can now see the truths that African American citizens have experienced and lived for years?
Well, I think you answered, oops, I don't think I'm on here.
You're on.
Okay. I think you answered part of it in your question about social media. We've been blessed to have social media that's highlighting things that we've been talking about for years. And now all of the public can witness the kind of atrocities that are going on, not with every majority American, but with certain segments of law enforcement. But race relations, in my opinion, if you look at this room, they're at an all-time high in certain sectors. And I think the campaigns and the people who are meanest have been brought out of the woodwork so that they can have some intrinsic power by forces who are campaigning negatively, and they now have a platform that they never had, so they feel safe to come out and say all the malicious things that they're saying. But I want to make one other point too. I think, you know, I'm a woman supporter and supporting the woman candidate, but when President Barack Obama was elected, I think a lot of people are saying, well, if they're elected an African American, anybody can get elected. And I think in electing an African American, a lot of people who were angry about it have been on his case over and over and over, the birth of whatever that's been going on. But my fear right now is that we're sitting someplace where we could end up in this country with race relations and human relations being absolutely thrown in the gutter if the wrong person gets elected. And I think everybody's saying, well, you know, if they elected an African American, we don't have to sweat anymore. Anybody can get elected. But they have not elected a woman. And we have to be vigilant, because this country, inclusiveness and togetherness means all to people like us who've come to enjoy this country or who were brought here to enjoy this country. And so my fear is that we're going to become complacent. Race relations are not worse than they've been. It's just in our face. That segment of society that's always had problems, the KKKs, the skinheads, the right-wing people who've never wanted to share America with people of color. So I don't think it's worse. I just think we now can see it. But I think for people who've always been on the right side, remember, this last little comment, remember, racial justice for African Americans didn't happen with African Americans alone. It happened with good white people who wanted to stand for something, who were abolitionists, who protected the slaves, who did all they could for us to finally get our freedom. So I never want to forget that we didn't get here alone.
Now, as somebody who's dedicated her life to civil rights, how does a new president bridge this wide and incredibly bitter divide that we find in this country, not only during this campaign, but in the years preceding it?
Well, I'm not going to necessarily buy into the fact that the racial divide is greater. And I'm not going to buy into the fact that race does matter. We have racial problems, or the NAACP, who's been in business for 105 years, would be out of business. So it's clear that there's discrimination. There are you know, intrinsic biases that people don't know they have, and things that work out in the marketplace that makes it very difficult. But I think the tone that's set by a president makes all the difference in the world. And you can look at the two campaigns, and you can see one is for togetherness, one is for inclusion, one is for trying to take care of the problems, not ducking the problems. One is going into our community and campaigning there and talking to people about the issues and trying to figure out what we can do about them. Now, race relations in America are very difficult. It's not anything that with a snap of a finger you can take care of, because it's all about personal change in one sense. It's about contact in another sense. It's about breaking down stereotypes in another sense. And also, affinity is a big barrier to race relations because when we hire, we want to hire people we're comfortable with, people we know. It isn't like you are outright racist. You just want somebody there that you're comfortable with, that you can work with. And so it's the intrinsic biases that come with affinity that makes it difficult to really solve the problem of race relations. But a president who is not afraid to talk about race and just doesn't talk about it because he or she made a 20-minute visit to a black church that most of us wouldn't even go to, it has to be somebody that's been with us all the time. And you will find that a president who knows the community is not afraid of it, who knows how to talk about it, will never say we're all poor and if we walk the streets we get shot and all of the stuff that you're hearing that's derogative. He's not talking to black people, you know that. He's talking to his base. But the other candidate, which I'm supporting.
You can name her.
Oh, Hillary.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't know I could say it, so I didn't wear my
You're allowed
pen.
to say it. We are a
pen.
nonpartisan organization, but people have names, and you can name them.
And so, Hillary came out of law school working for people in our community. She worked with Marion Wright Element on children's programs. Her husband, Bill, is the first black president, if everybody would acknowledge it. And so she'll make a big difference. Now, she'll be able to do more, I think, toward race relations than President Obama could because they beat up him so. They beat up on him, and then those of us African Americans, we didn't want to beat up on him because the others were beating up on him. So he had a free ride, more or less, on racial relations, and because he was black, he lifted the country up, he lifted blackness up, but he wasn't challenged like we will challenge Hillary to do something about race relations.
I want to ask you about this question of unconscious bias in the workplace. How do we address that?
I think we do it by calling it out when we see it. I'll give you a quick example. When I worked at CTA, there was an African American woman who was on the heavy side, who was very, very black, who had very long fingernails, but she was brilliant. And she'd been with the CTA for a long time, and she said she couldn't get a promotion. So I had a good relationship with my CEO. So I went to him one time, I said, so what's wrong with Georgia? And the moment I said it, he starts getting flushed. He says, well, I said, she seems very qualified. She's applied for so many things. He said, well, I don't know. Sometimes she doesn't make it. So I said, Ralph, she's really black, huh? Really black, not black like we use it. He said, yeah. I said, and she's got long nails, right? And she's fat. He said, what are you suggesting? I said, I just want you to think about that. Then I want you to think about her qualifications. Now, she got the next promotion. Although I made her temporarily cut her nails. But she got the next promotion, and so you have to call it when you see it. People don't know they have it. I have biases, and if somebody doesn't call them out, I will never know that I have them. And I don't think I'm expressing them. I work in civil rights. I'm a social cultural anthropologist. I know about people. I know about different cultures. But I'll bet you somebody in this room could trip me up on something that I don't know exists, a bias that I have that's going to be expressed operationally. It won't be expressed because I'm talking about it. It'll be something I'll say, or something I'll do, or somebody I won't like to be close to. And so I think you have to call them out. I had to call myself out on gays, same-sex marriage. I had to deal with me. And once I dealt with me, I could deal with other people having their rights. And so we each have to challenge ourselves to deal with the new things that confront us. For example, I'm still struggling with how to deal properly with transgender. Mm-hmm. I know it when I see it. I'm not comfortable. I don't know, do I say he, do I say she, do I say it, do I say we? You know, I mean, these are all the things that we have to talk out loud about as society changes and as we come in contact with each other. And it's the contact with each other in an honest relationship that will make all the difference in the world.
what led you, and at what point in your life did you decide that you were going to commit yourself to civil rights work? When did it start for you?
Well, probably started in the church. You know, we all grow up, black folks, mostly black folks, if their mamas can catch them, and their papas, we grow up in the church. And so we grow up hearing about rights and wrongs. But it didn't materialize. It was a part of my core to always want to be addressing problems. I chose not to be a church worker, like many members of my family. I chose showbiz, politics, all kinds of things to make money. I had an interest in money. I thought by now I'd be a millionaire. I wish I hadn't turned down Tina Turner's husband. That's not a true story, guys, by the way. But
It is now.
it is now. But I don't know. It evolved. I can tell you, I first got smitten when I was a high school dropout working in a factory. I used to do embroidery on bowling shirts, and they used to have this white radio station on all the time in New York. I was working in New Jersey, and I first got smitten down there in that basement when I heard JFK. And I go, oh my gosh. No, I heard Martin Luther King first, the big rally that I wasn't a part of, and then it was JFK. And I go, oh, there's something else going on in the world that I don't know about. But I didn't activate it right then. I went on and did a little stint in show business, and then I decided I was going to come to California. And my stint in show business went downhill. I was cute. I could dance.
We have a picture. Taylor, do you? We should say that's Asa Love. Tell us about Asa Love.
Well, before she was Asa Love, she was Billy, with Billy Lilly and the Thunderbirds. And that was a rock and roll all night long, twist and shout. And I thought he hired me because I could sing. I guess I was never a great singer, but I could sing enough, but I could twist the night away. And we worked colleges, and we worked military bases, and we worked all around. And I then decided that I didn't like twisting the night away, that I wanted to be like Peggy Lee. I wanted to stand up and say, fever, and make a lot of money. And so I then went to New York, got somebody to write me an act, I got some training, and I became Asa Love. So I was Asa Love for a couple years, did good, went to Catskills, did all of that, then got a big gig in Florida, stayed up 3 nights partying, and when I got there, I couldn't talk. I forgot what my instrument was, and I didn't take care of it. And after about a week down there, I figured I was gonna get fired, so I got the hell out of there before they fired me. So then I went to Cleveland, where my bass was, my sister, and I was going to find out what was wrong with my vocal cords, and Carl Stokes was running. And I went to CORE to volunteer. I had a little Chevrolet, little car. And was,
Congress of Racial Equality.
Congress of Racial Equality.
Civil rights group.
That's right. Went to volunteer to help them out, and I saw some men sitting behind a desk, women, that were as dumb as Dora. I had no college degree, but I could outwork them. I could outthink them. And I got so into that campaign trying to make that thing work for Carl Stokes that I blew my gig in the Catskills. I was supposed to be in the Catskills in March with Peg Leg Bates. Y'all don't know Peg Leg Bates, but Peg Leg Bates was a famous black man who had one leg, who could dance like you wouldn't believe. And he had made a fortune and had a resort up in the Catskills. And I was supposed to report in March, and it was about mid-April when I blew my gig. There was 2 gigs I blown. I go, showbiz ain't for me. Let me just stay out of it. And so when that campaign was over, there was a gentleman who said to me, oh, you're really bright. You ought to come to California where you can get a free education. I go, oh no, I'm a high school dropout. Oh, that doesn't matter in California, he said. So I got in my car. When the campaign was over, by myself. Women didn't do that in those days. By myself, I drove to California. Didn't know geography, didn't know topography. I didn't know what the Catskills were. I didn't know, when I saw those tumbleweeds, I thought somebody was about to come after me in my car, and I sped up to get past them. So coming to California was a big change in my life.
I want to ask you about your early life. Now, you were born in West Virginia.
Yes.
In a very large family, 18 children.
Yes.
You lost your father at a very early age.
Yes. I was 6.
You were 6.
Uh-huh.
And how did your mother cope? How did she raise you?
Well, first of all, with the family of 18, let me divide it. 6 died very early at childbirth, so it was always just 12 of us. And then there were 6 of us when my dad died who were minors. So 6 were adults. So Mom had 6 of us that she was left to see after they were minors. And when you come from a coal mining camp, you heard that song, I Left My Soul at the Company Store? That's where we were company store people. And when the husband dies, there's nothing there for the wife to do but pack up and leave. And so she moved to the city. We were a place called Raleigh, West Virginia, although we had to do our birth certificate at a place called Berkeley, because we didn't have all that stuff at Raleigh. And so we went, there's Dave shaking his head because his folks came from the same place. We went to Charleston, West Virginia, which was quota city. And my mom and my dad were musicians. My dad taught music as well as coal mining, and he was very entrepreneurial. And so when we went to Charleston, my mom took her 6 little orphan kids, put us in black and white, made us a little singing group. One brother played the piano, he's still alive, and she took us out singing. I think that's where I got my thinking I could sing.
I think so, yeah.
So she took us singing, and she made money all through West Virginia singing with her kids. I think she thought she was Mahalia, and I think she always resented Mahalia because Mahalia made it and Mom didn't make it as big as Mahalia. But Mom married a preacher. And we thought Mom was lucky to get the preacher, but we didn't know that the preacher married Mom because he was from a sharecropper's family. And the more children you have, the more prosperous you are. And he knew if he married Mom, he would never have to have a choir. He was a preacher. And he would never have to worry about doing anything in the church because Mom was a missionary. Mom was very intelligent. She didn't go to college because her dad told her mom, Alabama, that if she was going to go to college, then my grandmother would have to pack up and move with my mother when she went to college. So my grandmother wasn't about to leave her husband, so Mom didn't go to college. So Mom wasn't all that dumb, considering that she got married when she was almost 14 and had her first baby when she was 15, and she had babies from when she was 15 to she was 39. And I say, thank God she didn't know about Planned Parenthood, because me, Cecilia, and Maggie wouldn't be here. So that transition into Michigan, I know where you're trying to go. We were in West Virginia singing. She married this preacher, and he was an evangelist, and he liked to go places and start churches, and the war was on, and so we ended up in Muskegon, Michigan. Then we went to Cleveland, Ohio. Then we went back to Muskegon, Michigan, and everywhere we went, he started a church. That's where I got my missionary work from, was we had to help him start these churches. And he had a saying, most of the time it was true, where 1 or 2 are gathered in his name, let's have church. So I got used to 1 or 2 being gathered in his name, having church. And then I got used to raising money for the church. And I got used to doing a lot of things that you don't think is training for your future in the church.
But it was.
It was.
It was. Now, West Virginia, at the time of your childhood, was a very segregated place.
Well, yeah, as 6 years old, all I remember is we lived up on the hill. My dad was a coal mining manager, and we had the white man's house. We had plumbing. Everybody around us didn't have indoor plumbing. Mom wore little furs, and my little oldest sister wore silk stockings. And on one side of this top of the hill we lived on was all whites. And they used a pejorative name to describe those whites, and we were not allowed to walk down that side. And the other side, you walk through the field. My grandmother had a business, lived at the bottom of the next knoll, and she had a restaurant over there, and they used to have cows out in this field. And we'd have to walk past the cows because we didn't want to walk down the road by the white folks' house to get to the bottom of the hill. Those damn cows would chase us every time. We'd be going through there, and the cows would come, and we'd run, and we'd get to the bottom of the hill. But now, in a coal mining town, you know, when the miners go in the mines, they all come out with black faces. And so I don't think we were on the Mason-Dixon line. That's almost deep south, but not quite. Mm-hmm. And so the racial divide, at least in the camp town, wasn't as great. Mm-hmm. We created them ourselves because we, like in America today, everybody goes to a black church, everybody goes to a white church, we created those enclaves, but I don't think we ever felt any real racial outpouring toward blacks. There's a lot of blacks on the bottom of that, I remember that. And up on that hill where I grew up, there were lots. It was mixed. So we were able to live together.
Good. So I want to fast forward. You outran the tumbleweeds. You made it to California. You mentioned you were a high school dropout, yet I see a Phi Beta Kappa key around your neck.
I wore it for my guest today.
Yes.
I don't wear it often.
You talked your way into UC Berkeley. You have 3 graduate degrees. Tell us about the role that education has played in your life and why it's so important to you.
Well, the man who told me to come to California, I could get an education, he was talking about community colleges, but I didn't know the difference. So I got myself into Cal. And I was really scared. I had a bunch of little young people like in here, all bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, all had come from good backgrounds with academic training, and I go, oh my God, here I am. You know, I'm about 26 years old, and I don't have any math, English, I gotta work hard. And I did. I graduated in 2.5 years with honors. My first job in California was at UC Davis recruiting African American and Latino kids. And I used to take this key and I'd hold it up and say, do you know what this is? And almost all of them were like me, didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was when I got it. I didn't know what it was when I was asked to join. I thought, to my sorority sisters who were here, I thought it was a sorority, wrote me a letter. And I go, I'm in Pennsylvania, my first job. I go, ain't this a hoot? I'm out of college. And then they want me to join a sorority? And somebody next to me said, honey, that is not a sorority. And I found out that I had just worked myself into an elite class. And so when I was working at UC Davis recruiting students, I would ask them if they knew what it was. And most of the ones that we were recruiting would have deficits in their background. And I'd tell them it didn't matter. You know, I would tell them my story, that I went with no background. And I got the same certificate as the young whites and blacks who had gone to good academic schools got. And that I had the same union card that they had. And that if you wanted to work hard, you could do it. And that whole thing about education, I think I was always a good student, but I dropped out because in those days, you either went to a vocational school if you were African American or you dropped out. And I wasn't, nobody counseled me to go to college, and so when all my friends went to the school to get ready for going to college, they sent me to a vocational school, and I was typing, and I hated it. Then I went to dressmaking school, and I hated it, and I just dropped out, I gave up. But the truth of the matter is that I think education was always important to me. I remember the first lesson I had when I moved into a school with all whites, and somebody told me to get the chair, and I said, the chair? And they said, the chair. And I said, the chair? And they did what you did. They started laughing, and I go, oh, okay, I got a little problem here. And I think from that point on, that is one of the little painful memories I have of the light coming on, that I had some deficits that I had to overcome. And so I think education has always been key. I don't have 2 higher degrees. I almost have 2.
Okay.
I just have the UC Berkeley degree in Cultural, Social Anthropology. I went to Penn to take anthropology, a doctorate. I was accepted there. And when I was sitting in the class, the only black in the class, and he starts talking about hybrids. Y'all know what a hybrid is? And started talking about if you mix races, somebody's going to become like is it the donkey that can't have a baby? Which one is it? The mule. And I felt like I was being discussed in that class. And the only thing that stopped him from telling the truth about race relations was my one little black seat that I was holding in that class. And I decided then I didn't want to be an anthropologist. I got out of it. Came to Davis, took a little bit more in anthropology, but then I met the first Brown love of my life was Willie Brown. He and I had some unpleasant encounters. Then I met the second love of my life was Jerry Brown. And I was working at UC Davis, and I could hear this man got elected and didn't like fancy stuff and drove a Plymouth and lived in an apartment and slept on the floor. And I go, ooh, I need to go work for that guy. And if you have the will, it will happen. I just told a young lady in the back who said she was thinking about going to one college or another. I said, pick one. You have the will, it will happen. If you have the will, it will happen. Will is nothing but faith. And if you can think it and believe it, Jesse Jackson said, you can achieve it. And so I still go to school today. I take classes on my computer. I learn things. I mean, I got more technology in my house. Everybody come in, they think old people can't use this or that. Come to my house, and you will see that that's a myth, because you got to learn to keep up with the time. And I am always trying to take something. I tried to learn Chinese. That was a little too hard for me. But one day I might learn it.
Tell us about your time at the California Teachers Association. That was a really pivotal time. You led that group at a time when women, a woman wouldn't be in that role, and
you
a woman
of color,
and a woman of color wouldn't be in that role. And you led that group for a very long time. And I will tell you that I've spoken to people in this room who say you had so much power in that role that some people were afraid of you.
I wish I'd known it. Well, when Jerry Brown finished his stint, there's something you learn if you're an appointee. You don't stay right to the end. But I stayed right to the end because I thought Tom Bradley was going to get elected. And I wanted to continue to do what I'd been doing in state service. And so I hung around, and then Willie Brown gave me a contract so I could work with Maxine Waters. Y'all, I'm calling these names. You know who these people are? Okay. If you don't, just raise your hand. I'll put a title, but we don't have time for me to tell you how.
Maxine Waters, Congresswoman from Los Angeles.
And so he assigned me to Maxine Waters. Now, if you know politics, you know I didn't know politics as well as I do now. But Maxine and some of the other women who come from LA were really enemies. And so Maxine was really pumping me up, and I was going to put on her first women's conference. And she came to the second floor and saw me talking to Gwen Moore. And she shut down. Gwen Moore was an enemy from the camp in Los Angeles. I shouldn't have been in the hallway talking to her, so Maxine shut down. And then Maxine had a young man working for her who really liked me, and he told CTA about me. And CTA, the guy came up to talk to me. I didn't know I was being interviewed. And there was a woman in UTLA who was in BAPAC. I was the president of BAPAC. And I said, what about CTA? She said, oh, just tell him it's a sleeping giant. So he took me to dinner, and I didn't know it was an interview. I figured we were just talking. I said, well, I hear your organization is a sleeping giant. He called me a month later and said, you got the job. I go, what job? So I got from being in a holding pattern to CTA as a lobbyist for community colleges, and I had never really lobbied. I had, in my position as chief deputy director, I'd done budgets, and so I knew the legislature a little bit. But I was now a, quote, lobbyist. And I go, what am I supposed to do with this? I ain't know anything about community college because I skipped community colleges. And so I was in that job about 6 months. The staff didn't like me because I didn't come through the union. And I was black. And they gave me a cold shoulder. They gave me hell. Nobody tried to help me. Well, I had a few friends across the street, so, you know, and CTA at that time didn't really care that much about community colleges because they're K-12 from their core. And so that was like a little throwaway, so I could get through that. And so I did that for about 6 months, and the lady that hired me posted a position for assistant manager. And the ladies in the office quit speaking to me. Oh, that position was just created for somebody important. I figured, well, it's not gonna be me, because I'm not late. I got a call, I got that position that I never applied for. I never applied for it. I got the position. And then the lady died 6 months later. And she had cancer. And so my boss says, well, you're acting, you're it. It took him 1 year to get that racist board of the CTA to hire me. I did 2 jobs for 1 year. The other job wasn't much, but I did 2 for 1 year. And one day he called up and he said, congratulations, you are now the political director of California Teachers Association. That meant I had their PAC, I had all their staff, and I had all those 300,000 teachers that we could train. And we invented something called the Political Institute. And you will see teachers today who will come up to me and say, I got my start in your institute. They're elected to this, they're elected to that. And when I took over as the political director of CTA, the trial lawyers were #1 in the lobby group in America, in California. And so I got to tell you one little piece about being empowered, though, because there's a lesson about letting people empower you that you don't know are empowering you. When I first got to CTA as a lobbyist, Willie Brown, is he gone? Who had blocked me from a promotion, hurt me to my heart. This is when I was working for Jerry Brown. So I got over to CTA, and I was over there about 3 months, and I get this call from Willie Brown. I want to see you at some other address. And I go, why? Well, I got over there, and there's a smoke-filled room with all the big lobbyists who smoke cigars, all white men in that room. And I went in to see Mr. Willie Brown, and he says, I want you to get me $50,000. I want $25,000 for me and $25,000 for Dave Roberti, and I need an answer as quickly as possible. So I said, what? $50,000? They're gonna kill me. So I went back and I called this woman, the boss who wasn't dead, and I said to her, I had this strange meeting. She says, what did he want? She was a smoker. I said, I could see her. What did he want? I said, well, I told her. And she didn't say $50,000 like I had. You know, she said, I'll call you back. I go, oh. They must have that kind of money for real. She called back, she said, Willie Brown and Dave Roberti has never come to the CTA. You get them to come here, they get the money. I go, okay. I said, so now I think I'm in charge a little bit now. So I call her back and I say, well, why don't we create a little reception so all the teachers can meet them when they come there and present the checks. In those days, you could present the checks. It wasn't a stigma like it is now. And we presented checks. So I called Willie Brown's office and I called David Roberti's office, and David Roberti got right back to me and said, I'll be there. Willie Brown's office said he can't come. So Willie Brown called me up about 4 days. What happened, Huffman, to the money? I said, your staff said you weren't available, so Dave Roberti's going to this reception on Sunday, and we'll just give him your check to give to you. So Willie Brown, you know, you can see him. I heard him say all across his office, "Who told Huffman that I couldn't go to the CTA?" And so he says, "I'll be there." And obviously, if you think about that, the fact that he called me and asked me for the money empowered me. And I have been empowered along the way like that in so many instances where you don't know people are empowering you, but they really are. He could have called all the other people over there. He could have called Ralph Lynn, Joyce Fathom, anybody. But he gave me that instant bump up, and when I delivered him to the teachers, the powers that be let me stand up there with them. So here was this little chick that nobody knew in the CTA, all those teachers looking at me standing up front with Willie Brown, David Birdie. That was the shot in the arm that empowered me. And I have been empowered many times like that. And when I give a lecture, I say, don't underestimate yourself. Don't box yourself in. Don't decide that you're going to be just this, because there might be that over there that's better for you. Be flexible, be nimble, and take advantage of opportunities, and don't be shy. Have a little courage. It's what you need, just a little bit of courage. Don't have to have as much as I do, just have a little bit.
This has been an amazing conversation. We're going to turn it over to the audience for questions.
Oh, I still have to do that.
Michelle has a microphone. We have a few minutes left. If you have a question, just raise your hand and Michelle will bring the mic over to you.
It's been wonderful to hear you. I've known Alice 35 years, and could I ask you, I know the answer, but would you add grateful, be grateful? Because those of us who are out dealing with some of the people who are voting for she who cannot be named find that the millennial generation is not very grateful. And my recollection of you is that you were always grateful, and you were today. So what would you advise?
Well, Barbara, I think we kind of underestimate our young people today. They have a whole different frame of reference than we had. They haven't come through what many of us have come through. They don't know the humility that some of us suffered trying to make it up the ladder. And all of you have raised your children to tell them they can have anything they want in the world. You have never raised them to have humility or to let somebody walk all over them. And so we had to let people walk over us. You've been the first woman here and the first woman there, first black here. And so we learned it along the way, which was a part of our training. Now, these young people, I can't tell them how to behave. The one thing I know about their generation is nobody can tell them anything. They're going to learn their way. I'm sure that they have in their core to be gracious, and at the right time they will. But I like to stay in tune with young people, but I don't like to think I'm one of them. I like to think they know something I don't know. And I like to think they compliment me. And I compliment them. And so I try to take my cues from them as much as I can. I'll slap them down. But most of the time they don't need it.
Okay. Where else? Any other questions? Yes. And if you wouldn't mind identifying yourself.
Hi, I'm Cassandra Jennings with the Greater Sacramento Urban League. It's great just to hear your journey, and I know there's a lot more. You mentioned a couple of times about family, and can you tell me what role did your family play? And I know many of them looked up to you, and how did you use that to really support your journey?
Well, I made a little statement that I chose not to do the church. But that didn't mean that I didn't have a prayer band. And so my mother, who was very religious, would get on me because I always had a dirty mouth. I've been clean mouthed today, but I have a dirty mouth. And so my mom was always my backbone. And then I had 3 sisters that we were very close. And anything that I was trying to get done, one of my sisters was available, if not all 3. Now, one of them was a Bible-toting sister. One of them was a jazz, she owned a radio station for a while. And then one is my baby sister who is with me now, who was just wanted to, whatever I did, she wanted to do better. And so we were a good team. And so now one sister had 14 kids. Almost all of them are in Sacramento. And when I moved to Sacramento, they moved to Sacramento. It wasn't 14 then, she kept having some. And my older sister was already here. So we had the band of 3 for a long time, and anything I needed to get done, I could call on one sister. For example, I was debating on radio, somebody on same-sex marriage. And you know, I knew they were going to go to the Bible on me about God created Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve, and I know all that stuff. And so my sister wasn't as hip on same-sex marriage as I was, but so I called up, I said, okay, Ida, I'm gonna be on this religious program. I need a scripture. I said, when that sucker tells me about Adam and Eve, I wanna tell him something, I wanna quote the Bible. She gave me 3 Bible quotes. And so, you know, it's that kind of, so I tell Mom. Mom goes, what are you up to? Why don't you clean up your mouth? I go, look, Mom, I'm out fighting the barracudas. You sitting at home, you pray for me so I can bring you money so you can keep praying. And so my family's always been my rock. And a family that size, you know, it's a deterrent in one sense because you don't make a lot of friends on the outside because you have friends inside. And so you're just running with your friends and you don't get out to run with other people like you should. But my family's been my rock.
Hi, Phyllis Marshall. Alice, I know you're really young, but I wonder if you could let us know, what do you think is the difference between the young folks who are part of the civil rights movement and the young millennials we see today and the movement that they're kind of pushing forward? You know, are there some, you know, correlations between both? And then a second question is, you know, what is it that we can say to young millennials today that are so disillusioned with politics and with engaging in the elections?
Well, I think if you're talking about movements like Black Lives Matter and those, well, you know, when we came along in civil rights and we were more conservative, Congress of Racial Equality, and we discounted the NAACP, it was too conservative. And then the Panthers came along, and all of a sudden, all of us were conservative because the Panthers were there, but the Panthers did something in society that gave us more credibility. Same thing with the Black Lives Matter. I think I have done so many police brutality hearings and so many marches, and it is heartbreaking that every day there's another killing. Somebody said it should be, the health department said it's an epidemic. It's a health problem. And so you get worn down. I mean, I know very well who to talk to. I know about police relations. I know that not all police are bad, but the energy to take it to the next step just sort of wears you down. You know, you almost want to cry every time you see another one. Instead of march, you want to cry. And I think something like Black Lives Matter in their own way, they've given us a bump. I think Kaepernick certainly gave us a bump. And if you look at the young people, they're giving us a bump up. Can we take advantage of it? Yes. But they're making it credible to talk about it across all spectrums. They got the limelight, and now they're getting everybody's attention, and now everybody knows that Black Lives Matter and all lives will matter when Black Lives Matter. And until then, we have a problem. As far as politics, I'm just going to tell you, in this room, I'm preaching to the choir. These young people have to go out. I do know that the parties have dropped the ball because we don't come out and tell you why we're Democrats as opposed to why we're Republicans, and to get you to understand why you should be in one party or the other. I would say this: America needs a two-party system. Without it, we would have chaos. We would have, people would overthrow governments. And
revolution.
Yeah. And we have a great two-party system. So when I see the Republican Party messing up, I get really mad. I don't want them to get too strong because I'm a Democrat, but I don't want them to get too bad because we need two parties in this America to make this America run. And so I think the parties have to do more work. I think And when I sit around the table, I talk about why I'm a Democrat. Maybe a lot of people don't know why I'm a Democrat, but I tell them why I'm a Democrat. And then I'm sure the other side tells them why they're Republicans. I say they're Republicans because Republicans only care about themselves. And we Democrats, we care about everybody. And we always try to lift everybody up. And yeah, we raise taxes, but it's for a good cause. It's for, public education. It's for all this. So I think that there's not enough party education going on.
All right, we have time for one brief question, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I just want Alice to ask her family to stand up.
Okay. We'll do that. We'll do that at the very end. Okay.
Yen Marshall with AT&T. I had the pleasure of working with Alice throughout some collaborative effort, especially in the youth mentorship. Mm-hmm. And so I know how passionate you are about mentoring. I'm just curious in knowing who was your mentor and how did that affect your leadership journey?
Well, Willie Brown asked me that yesterday too. My mother was. My mother had, by the time I came along, she finally realized that she couldn't raise all 12 kids the same. And she also realized by the time I came along, although my baby sister will tell you she didn't get the benefit of it, but my mom realized that just beating her kids, and she never wanted us to go to prison or jail, so she didn't spare the rod. But she spared it with me. And that's because I would have a conversation with my mother. And if she was getting ready to beat me, I'd say, okay, but can we talk? And they said, if they said that to Mom, they would have gotten slapped. But somehow she and I had a rapport. And I watched her not only raise us, but do church work. She was a bright woman. We took her to Israel, and she saw the Holy Land and all that. She came back and wrote a little paper. She was 82. And so I just watched her all her life. And she was a very moral woman, very moral. And I really came to appreciate that. And the last thing you want to do for my mama was to have a baby. And I was so much to please her, I still don't have a baby.
But you have family here, and I would like to honor your request and ask if members of your family wouldn't mind standing up. I know we have quite a few here today.
No, you only have 1, 2.
Thank you.
And what's interesting is I have one from each sister. She belonged to Ida. Some of you knew Ida, who was a great community activist. She belonged to Jazzy Cat, who had the radio station and the little orange Mercedes, and she belongs to my baby sister.
Great. Welcome to you all. That's all we have time for today. Our thanks to Alice Huffman for an amazing conversation.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so very much.
To Mayor Willie Brown, to the hardworking teams at the Dewey Square Group,